Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome back. We're looking at question number 14 here on the 2009 grade 7 Gauss paper. Which of the points positioned on the number line best represents the value of s divided by t? So we've got s and we've got t. Now look at where they are. They're bigger than 0, they're bigger than 1, but they're less than 2. Okay. But they're also very, very close together. And we know s is less than t because the number line increases as we read left to right. Okay, so they're very close to one another, but s is definitely less than t. So what could we do? Well, I want to talk about s divided by t. Let's just go over to our notepad and get a fresh piece of paper, I suppose. So I'm just going to really quickly recopy what we've got here. S is about here, T is about here. I know U was about here. Get the number 1 there and 0 there. And there's a P, Q, and an R as well. So P is about a third of the way, Q is half, and R is pretty close to 1. Okay. So I can see that S is less than T here. If we want to talk about S divided by T, well, let's divide both sides by T. As long as I do the same thing to the inequality, I get to keep it around, for the most part. If you haven't explored inequalities a whole lot before, you'll find that there are certain things that allow you to keep the sign. You know, dividing by a nice positive number, multiplying by a positive number, adding or subtracting numbers. If you do the same thing to both sides, you get to keep the sign. Whereas things like multiplying by a negative number, flip the sign around. Same as doing 1 over something. Okay, but in this case, we're dividing both sides by t, a positive number, and so we're allowed to keep the sign the way it is. Okay, and I made a little goof. We divide both sides by t. But what's t divided by t? What's anything divided by anything? It's 1. So this tells me s divided by t is less than 1. So the answer is probably P, Q, or R. We've narrowed it down a little bit. And now you could say, well, s is really close to t. S is almost the same value as t. So s divided by t, it's almost like dividing one value by itself, so I'd expect this to be pretty close to r. And this is indeed the answer we go with. I'm just going to guess it's C based on alphabetical order, but let's actually go back and check. Yeah, it is. Okay. So r is going to be the answer. Now, this is a nice way that we can sort of think through the problem, reason our way through the problem, but it's not the only way to do it. And I know some people out there are uncomfortable because you didn't have any numbers in there. Well, you're wrong. I did have one number, but I understand where you're coming from. So another way we could approach this question, if we're a little better at estimating values, and you have to be very comfortable with your number line to do this, is to say, okay, Q's probably about 0.5. It's about halfway between 0 and 1. R, I would guess it's probably like something like 0.9. P might be about 0.3. S is sort of in the middle, might call that 1.5. Maybe T is 1.6. And U is pretty close to 2, so I might guess he's about 1.9. The numbers here don't have to be exact, but they do have to actually represent the situation. It would be a little ridiculous to call R 0.6 and Q 0.5, considering that they are fairly spaced apart, and R is so close to 1. But if you're good at picking out, this number should be about this on the number line, you can actually introduce actual numbers to this situation. It won't be exact, obviously not, but you can actually do the division of S divided by T now. Or you can approximate it a little bit and see which value you're closest to. There's still a little guesswork, but for people who like numbers, this is a great way to keep numbers in the problem. Okay? So in this case, well, then S is 1.5. T is about 1.6. Not exact, but close enough for our purposes. They fit the number line. And so we do 1.5 divided by 1.6, and you can get out your handy calculator. Or if you're really good, you can divide this. It's 15 divided by 16, which I think is about 8.9. Or, sorry, 8.7. 0.9375. And just as predicted, that's really close to 1. It's a little less than 1. And r being 0.9, that's a fantastic approximation. So that's another way to see that, yeah, r is going to be your answer. So you can either reason your way through the problem, which I would argue is the smarter way to do things, and probably going to serve you a lot better in the future, just in math and on math contests, if you can reason your way through the problem. But if you need to add some numbers, I won't tell if you don't, and it's okay in most cases, as long as your numbers are accurate to the picture. Okay? So there we go, and that's question 14. Up next, of course, question number 15.